Yeah,
Okay, there we go.
I
All
think
right.
that's great. So welcome everyone. Hopefully you can all see the screen. Again, we let me just tell this thing that I know it's recording us. If you want to be able to see the faces of the participants, you can just switch your view to gallery, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself, and then my colleague will introduce herself. There we go. So I am Dr. Jude Whitton. I'm an assistant professor of communication studies at Riverside City College, and I'm also the co-coordinator along with my colleague here, who's going to introduce herself in a moment, on we of the assessment committee. So Denise.
And I'm Denise Kruizenga-Muro. I am an assistant professor of English. I run the Writing Center at Riverside City College. And as Jude mentioned, we are co-coordinators of our assessment committee.
So just a quick overview of our agenda this morning or afternoon, depending on the time zone that you are in right now. We're going to quickly discuss what equitable and culturally relevant assessment is. And then we're going to talk about how you as faculty can evaluate, is your assignment or your assignments both equitable and culturally relevant in terms of assessing students' learning. And then lastly, you are all ambassadors to your campuses. And so how can you bring the information that you've learned today back to your own campuses and put the assessment knowledge that you're learning today to practice on your campuses?
So I've just dropped an article in the chat that you are welcome to download. It is from this article that we created this presentation and where we got the matrix that we're going to be sharing with you in just a few minutes. So today, our goal is to talk to you about and to give you a chance to explore culturally relevant assessment and how it can be used to promote equity on your campus. And the article forms the basis of that exploration.
And so as Denise shared, she dropped this article in the chat. Our committee, the past year, I would say the year for sure, and then half of a year, really wanted to look at this idea of culturally inclusive and equitable assessment. And so each meeting that we have, we've read articles, we've listened to podcasts, et cetera, and had discussions. And this was one that was really valuable for our committee. And that's sort of why we decided to share that with all of you. So there are 5 things that are needed in an assignment to be considered both culturally relevant and inclusive for students to then hopefully decrease that achievement gap. So I'm going to briefly explain the first 4, and then we'll cover the next 2 in more detail. So the first one is alignment, and that's probably something most of us already are familiar with and that we're doing. And so this means that the assignment is aligned with the SLO for the course. And you really want all of your assignments right in the class to align to some or 1 or 2 of your SLOs for the class. The second one is clarity. And so that means that your expectations, as well as the tasks that you're having the students do, should be clear. And one of the things we heard in the earlier sessions, as well as is discussed in this article and many others, is a rubric is helpful for that because it outlines the expectations for your students. They know what they're expecting of you. And I would also add consistency of your rubric across. So not changing the rubric from each assignment to an assignment, because maybe if I don't understand it the first time I meet with you or I email you as a student, now I have clarity. And I like to say that clarity is kindness. It's kindness for our students because they now understand what we want. It's also for us too, because it cuts down on the frustration that could happen between us, between the students and us, right? That we're not having that clarity together. Scaffolding is building lower stake assignments right early on. Again, something we're probably all familiar with for later assignments. So it's not just this one big assignment at the end, but we have these incremental assignments along the way. And then lastly, environment. And this refers to the environment in which the assignment is given. How is it delivered? What does the assignment itself look like? And the article discusses stereotype threat, that some students, depending on the type of an assignment or the environment in which it's given or how the assignment is delivered, may feel that it highlights race or ethnicity, gender, or privilege. And so being mindful of the environment and how the assignment is delivered and given. So these first 4, for the most part, are probably familiar to you on some level as you're planning your semester. And so Denise is going to dive into the next 2.
All right. So the final two features of a culturally relevant assessment are the assignment's utility value and the inclusive content. And both of these were mentioned by Dr. Denise in the keynote this morning. In fact, Dr. Whitton and I were just talking about that, kind of prior to the session starting, about how important it is for assignments to have both of these features. So according to the article, utility value has to do with how useful students think the assignment is or is going to be to them. And that's useful across kind of this timeline, right? So how useful is it going to be for them in the class, maybe for them in the upcoming class discussion? How useful is it going to be to help them do that final assignment? But then how useful is it going to be for them maybe in another class or at another school, or when they go on to future work or in their careers, right? That's one thing. I teach tutors, I train the tutors, our writing tutors, and I'm always reminding them that, if you're going to be a teacher, and a lot of students take my class to explore teaching careers, if you're going to be a teacher, you're going to use this in this way. And I try to make those connections between what they're doing in my class and their future work as a teacher. So that's really kind of in a nutshell what utility value is. So how useful is the assignment? How useful is what they're learning to them immediately, in the future, and then in the far future? And even personally, one topic that I cover with my students is a different form of argumentation. And I say, you know what? I use this form of argumentation. It's Rogerian argument. I use this form of argumentation when I'm in a discussion with somebody. So even personally, how does the material that they're learning in the class relate to their lives? So students are going to need to know what benefit they're going to get beyond just the grade. Like, they know that they're going to get the grade, but if it seems like they're doing something just for the grade, I think that's what students call busy work, right? I'm just doing this to keep busy. It's just to check a box. It's just to get a little check mark or whatever it is. And then the other measure is the inclusive content, or the other trick, I should say, for inclusive content. So this has to do with allowing students to make personal connections to the material. So that could be anything from, using pop culture references in your lectures or in your examples that you're providing to them, or maybe real world case studies. Maybe you're pulling something out of the newspaper for them to discuss or apply your class theories or whatever to stuff that's in the newspaper. It could mean allowing students to relate course material to their lives. I know Dr. Whitton does and feel free to jump in, Jude, an assignment where students are reflecting on their lives. They do reflective essays, so they can relate what they're doing in class to something they've done personally. And also, I'm an English teacher, so bringing in readings from different genres, from multicultural authors, from different cultures. Students want to see themselves in the work that they do and in the class material. And so utility value is basically, is it useful? And inclusive content is, can students relate that material to themselves and to their lives?
All right. So and now I'm going to we're going to look at this chart, and this actually comes from page 16 in the article. So I'll share that with you for future reference. And I'm going to pick on tests here for a moment, because oftentimes we think of exams of having both low utility value and low inclusive value. They don't necessarily have to. So again, the inclusive assignments, the students are going to demonstrate that they know the material because they're applying the content in a way that's familiar for them. And so generally speaking, tests don't necessarily do that. It's sort of, memorize the information and then share that information. Generally, that's what it looks like. And so there's this feeling of this exclusion from their lives, from their lived experiences. And we know that our students come into the classroom with their own experiential knowledge. And so we want to think about new ways that we can incorporate their experiential knowledge to the course material, right? That's still valuable and is important as well. But how can we do that and provide students with opportunities that is inclusive to their lives in a direct way, and also is hitting the learning objectives for the class? So in looking at an exam, it also does have low utility value as well, because the students, they don't perceive the value or the worth, generally speaking, on an exam outside of the class. Again, I'm going to memorize that material and I'm going to forget it later. I don't see the value. I don't see how I'm going to use this outside of the classroom. And what both of these do, if they have both low utility and low inclusive context, or excuse me, content, is it increases the achievement gap. Because if I'm good at memorizing facts, if I'm good at doing that, then that's great for me. But generally, most of our students, that's not how they learn. And also, it's a lot harder for them to have that buy-in. So even if I'm great at memorizing, where's that buy-in for me as a student? And so the students, in terms of utility value, they will see the purpose of the assignment as, I'm going to earn the grade. There's nothing outside of that. And so while maybe some assignments may necessitate that, the goal really is overall the assignment should have both a high to medium inclusive and utility value. And as I said a moment ago, generally speaking, tests are low in that, but you really need to look at the actual assignment that you're giving, whether it's a test, whether it's a formal essay or a homework assignment, because I would argue that in some of my classes, and I was talking earlier with Alpha, yes, it doesn't lead to transferring knowledge. Memorizing doesn't lead to transferring knowledge. It just says, I can memorize for the 2 days before the exam. I can spit out that information and yay me, I'm done, right? And I forgot it now for the final and I'm going to need to memorize again. We have had some STEM folks that mitosis and meiosis, if I think I said those two processes are correct, in doing this one assignment with, let me explain this to my friends who are not STEM majors. Let me explain this at a conference, like what language would I use? And that's how they have the students do some of their assignments. So taking the knowledge and having them put it in their own words and seeing where's the knowledge to that. So really a well-designed exam or test or essay or any other assignment really should hit on both of these. And we're going to talk now about and give you all an opportunity to evaluate equitable assessment and hopefully consider these tricks that we've shared with you a little bit.
All right, so now it's going to be time for you all to apply what you've learned so far about culturally relevant assessment to promote equity in your work in the classroom and in assessment of student work. So I'm going to be dropping some artifacts in the chat while my colleague describes what they are. So let me get to doing that.
Okay, trying to do there we go. Trying to do breakout rooms and click and talk at the same time. So we have 5 different artifacts that each of you will be examining within your breakout rooms. And so Denise is going to drop them in the chat. What does that mean? What does artifacts mean? I'm presuming that that's what you're asking, David. So artifacts are just examples, if that's what you're asking, because I'm waiting for the chat to catch up. So these are different examples that you are going to look at, and you are going to look at and see their inclusivity value. Oh, Alpa's point. I will let Alpa share that. So Denise is going to share with you what you're going to be looking at. So we've got an English essay that's talking about mythology, a math assignment, as well as an interview assignment, a final exam for anthropology, and a real estate and finance writing assignment. So Denise, if you can kind of share.
I'm working on getting this last one in here.
Sure.
All right, so there should be 5. Are there 5 in there now?
1, 2, 3. Let me scroll. 4, 5. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So so you said you want me to share kind of what they are real quick?
Yeah, if you don't mind just sharing what their expectation is, what they're going to do when they get into the room.
Oh, okay. Yes. So all right. So what you're going to do is I have included the matrix that you see in front of you on each of the documents that I've just dropped in the chat. And so what you're going to do is you're going to look at the item, whatever it is, the anthropology final, the prompt for a mythology paper, the 3 math problems, the career interview assignment from a music course, and then there are 3 short writing assignments from a real estate finance class. So you're going to take a look at those, and then you're going to determine, does this assignment have high inclusive content or low inclusive content? Does it have high utility value or low utility value? And then if you determine that it's low in one or both of those areas, what are some ways that this assignment could be improved so that it does have high inclusive content and or high utility value? So you're going to look at it, you're going to make a judgment, you're going to talk about it in your groups, you're going to make a judgment about it, and then we'd like you to choose one person to share out, because when we come back as a group, we're going to determine what you found. And I think the most interesting part is going to be hearing your recommendations for how to make the assignment better. Because that should then get everybody thinking, gee, now I need to go back to some of my own assignments on campus and talk about or think about ways to make those assignments more inclusive and have high utility value.
All right, so before I send you off into your breakout rooms, does anybody have any questions about any of what we shared or what we're going to ask you to do? And as you think about those, I will add, as you look at these artifacts, some of them have lots of great detail and some of them just have a little bit of detail. So you may need to use some critical thinking and say, okay, what do we think the students might be asked to do here? And then thinking about how can we make this either more inclusive or inclusive at all. So does anybody have any questions about what you're going to be
Someone
doing?
asked how long we'll be in the breakouts.
Let's assume we will give you probably about 15 minutes or so once you get in there, I would say, and we'll kind of gauge it. Denise and I will pop in and out of the different breakout rooms, but approximately 15 minutes, and then we'll come back as a group and really hear what you've found.
Any other questions? I'm trying to get into the chat to see if there's anything in there.
No problem.
Okay, I don't see any other questions in the chat, so I think we're ready.
I am going to just move a couple of folks around just to make this as even as I can. Let's do.
Oh, we have to tell them which artifacts, correct?
Yes. So group number 1, let me go back to my other paper here. Give me here. So group number 1, that's going to be, you came in from another session. Hello, Patricia. Let me see if
yeah, do I need to redrop the artifacts?
I'm not sure. What we can do is maybe go in the groups there. I think Patricia's just not sure what we're doing. So I'm going to go back for a moment. Denise, if you would mind, I'm just going to check the breakout rooms, just going over the group numbers. Thank you.
Absolutely. So it looks like we've had a couple people come in. All right. So welcome to those of you who have just come in. We've dropped an article in the chat. The article is called The Theoretical Matrix of Culturally Relevant Assessment. And so we're taking a look at 5 artifacts. We're going to put you into 5 groups. Each group is going to tackle one artifact. The matrix is located on the artifact itself, so you don't have to worry about kind of going back and forth between screens or whatever. And so we've got an anthropology final. We've got a prompt for a mythology essay. We've got 3 math problems. We've got a career interview assignment from a music class, and then we've got 3 short writing assignments from a real estate finance class. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put you into groups. It looks like Jude is putting in the chat which groups will be working with which artifacts, and then you're going to be determining, does the artifact that you have in front of you show high inclusive content or low inclusive content? Does it show high utility value or low utility value? And then if you say it's low in any one of those areas, how would you go about improving the assignment? And so let me get back and I will drop into the chat the article and the artifacts for everyone who has just come in. So here's the article coming at you. All right, so there's the article, and then I'm going to drop the artifacts again. So here comes the anthropology final. And then here comes the mythology paper.
So as Denise is dropping this in there, so I'll let her click and I can talk, because sometimes it's harder to click and talk. I will add some of the things that we have learned is, as I shared earlier, our students are really wise. They have experiential knowledge. They might not have the knowledge of the content of the class that we're teaching. They might not have that expertise knowledge, but if you're not sure how it's relevant to them, ask them. They just love to be included in that learning process. So, we're not this, we are wise as subject matter experts, but so are our students, and they can really, it makes it more of a transactional process. And that's one way to make it inclusive is to share that with them. And that garners respect right off the bat. And you don't have to sort of think outside of the box and oh my goodness, I don't know what to ask them. Say, how do you think, how does this relate to your lives? And bring that back next time. Like Alpa said, classroom dialogue, right? Yes, absolutely. There's that saying that the wise sage on the stage, like gone are those days. I don't like to be talked at, which is why we're going to put you all into groups right now. I think Denise got all of
everything's there, all right. The article plus the 5 artifacts.
Perfect. So we will see you all back in about 20 minutes. We'll broadcast out kind of some time checks along the way, and Denise and I will pop into your sessions. You don't need to acknowledge us when we get into your session. We will just pop in, and if you have any questions, you can ask us. All right. So I will go ahead and open all those breakout rooms for you. You should be able to join those rooms at the bottom of your screen. There should be that button to join breakout rooms. Sorry, folks, for the abrupt ending there. We hit the wrong.
That was my problem.
Wrong button. We're gonna give you a 2-minute warning, and instead you got the 1 minute.
On back, yes. Sorry.
Yanking back.
All right, I just dropped the article into the chat one more time for those who came in a little late. If you wanted to be able to grab it up, it is available.
So hopefully you all were able to have some good discussions in your groups and sort of look at this. And I know depending on what type of a example assignment your group had, some were more inclusive than others. And so we'll go ahead and bring back the questions for you all. And we'll go ahead and start with group 1. Hopefully you all were able to grab or have someone volunteer to be a speaker for your group. That was the group that looked at a mythology English essay. So would someone from group 1 mind sharing how did your group identify the inclusive and utility value of your assignment, and how perhaps did you recommend ways to improve it or things that the instructor could do in the class as a whole, maybe not on that one particular assignment?
So I think I was volunteered to speak for group 1.
Thanks,
I was in group 1 with Denise, Enid, and Christy, and we had a really great conversation. And we found our English assignment to have both low utility and low inclusive features. The low utility, because there was I think it was very activity driven. Right. It didn't start with the big picture, as Wiggins and McTagg would say, right? It didn't start with the big picture. So to me, if I was a student, I wouldn't know why I'm doing this. I just got to do this. I got to get through it. And again, transfer, right? That doesn't lead to transfer. It's not bringing me into the assignment. And is there a big picture to this assignment, or is it really just activity driven? Right. So I think then hence the low utility. Also, there was and as Christy pointed out, there's no due date. That's maybe it's on the syllabus, but there's no due date on the assignment itself. And we know students really do cross-reference, right? It's like everything's got to be right there. Just tell me now. So there's that. Also, Christy also pointed out how this is a lot of this is due right at the beginning of the course, like the first 3 weeks. So that could be an issue, right? Not every student can work that fast. And there is some trying to scaffold, but again, it's just referencing things. And then the low inclusiveness is students really have just one little space where they can bring in their cultural or their experience, and that's in one of the choices of the 5 or 6 choices that they have. So I think that it wasn't very inclusive. And lastly, we felt that there were way too many choices. Like I at first thought that they would have to write all of those sections, but clearly I didn't read it right. And if I didn't, right? I mean, students aren't, and it's only one they need to, and then there's a lot of overlap in the choices. So this thing was all over the place, and I'd be super scared if I'd pick the first one and go with it. The smallest number of text, and that's what I would go with. So that's what we thought: low utility and low inclusivity.
Awesome. As you were sharing, it comes back to that, like, clarity is kindness, right? Like, maybe give them 2 options. Like, choices are nice, but 2 options. And to your point about one of the options was inclusive, right? It did give the students a chance to bring in their experience. And one of the things that I think in all the reading that I've been doing in preparing, not only for this, but just for my classroom and making sure my classroom is like this, is there has to be consistency throughout. It can't just be, oh, look, I put this one question, this one option, this one time. Oh, look, my class is inclusive and culturally relevant. Look, it has to be a complete revamp. It can't just be this one little nugget here.
Then you lead with that, right? Right, you lead with that. This way, again, like you have this dialogue with your students, and it's not activity driven, right? Activity driven doesn't lead to learning.
Correct.
Love that term, activity driven, right? It's just doing that activity to get to the next activity, to get to the end of the semester, right? And so there's no connection to any of these bigger themes or ideas. Or if you want to think about it this way, no connection to the student learning outcomes. Like, what am I supposed to learn by the time I get done with this course? Yeah, love that term. I mean, I don't love it, but it's a nice way to conceptualize that. Did you have any suggestions for what might be done to make this better?
I'll let my group members speak. Not but I'm like, of course if they have anything to say.
I'll jump in real quick. When we talked about the choices, for instance, because of the overlap, you could just simplify it for the students. Be like, choice 1, discuss the symbolism of animals. Choice 2, discuss the relationship with characters. Choice 3, gods and goddesses. And then you might even have some sub questions, consider X, Y, and Z, but make it, it was just way too overwhelming. And then another is, there was, like Alba said, there was an attempt at scaffolding, but it was all on the same page in the same assignment. So we didn't know when the essay was due, but we saw that the topic sentence, choose your topic and write a topic sentence more or less by the end of September. And even then the instructor wrote, no, September 24th first, or the 24th, or the 26th. So.
Oh yeah, I see.
Yeah. And then, but there was no indication when the essay was due, and maybe that could have been a separate, somehow more clear delineation of the 2 parts of the assignment.
Thank you, Dr. Woods, for that. Okay, so group number 2, what were you? I know they had an algebra assignment. What did your group discover in terms of its utility value and suggestions that you might have come up with?
Yeah, hi, this is Edian speaking. So I'm not sure if I was chosen or if I volunteered myself. I don't remember which, but regardless. So first, we didn't know which SLO they were trying to match. There was a little confusion in terms of, there was no explanation of what the goal was. And I remember, and we only learned, algebra to pass the CBEST test and the CSAT test, and one moment, the interpreter froze. So, oh, there we go. I lost my train of thought for a second. So it was basically, we just learned good enough in order to remember, memorize, and pass the test. That was pretty much the goal. We don't want our students to do the same. So with this example, it's very low in terms of that. I think a better idea that we could recommend is that we put down the SLO again to help the student know which they're trying to accommodate, which objective they're trying to go for. And then they have a feeling of, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then another recommendation could be that we have the student rewrite the formula to match something that they do in their everyday life. And then there's that inclusive aspect, and they'll already know what's going on. Or just go ahead and putting things like on the area or the tables to kind of show visually what they should do.
We've kind of talked about that in our assessment committee about the importance of including the student learning outcomes on the assignments. That's something that I've started regularly doing in my class. Not just on the assignments, but on the board. When the students walk in, I say like, okay, everybody, welcome to class. Good morning. And here's what we're working on today. Here's the student learning outcome that we're covering today. And here's how this assignment connects to what we're doing. And so, yeah, we've spent a lot of time in our assessment committee talking about and wondering how we can get faculty to do more of that. So it's such a great suggestion.
And I also liked that idea of applying it to their day-to-day life, right? A lot of times in the areas of STEM, like, when am I going to use this? How does this apply to my life? And getting the students to think about that, right? It's not, and so I really liked that suggestion. Thank you so much for that. Group number 3, they had a career interview assignment for careers in music. So if someone from group number 3 wouldn't mind sharing, how did you rank the assignment and ways to improve that?
We didn't choose a person to speak, so I will just go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
We decided it was both low inclusive and low utility. Low inclusive because it didn't allow students to bring what they wanted to ask the interviewees, right? It was very prescriptive. This is what you must ask, which is not necessarily what the student wants to ask. It's also a high stress assignment. So they have to kind of cold call a professional and make connections that way. So it would have been nicer if the instructor provided a way to connect with people, because that's usually how professional things happen, right? It's those connections. The utility was an interesting one. Writing in the discipline is high utility, but this was so prescriptive. It didn't really give the student the opportunity to practice. So the email, which would have been high utility had the instructor provided feedback, didn't seem to be part of the assignment. It was kind of the student on their own. So suggestions would have been to allow work with students to come up with their questions, help the student proofread the email. So kind of work with the student on the email And then for the final reflection, allowing the student to write that in whatever way makes sense to them, as opposed to being, again, super prescriptive in how you write the final reflection. If my group mates want to add anything, feel free.
I like that suggestion.
As
Right,
soon
and
as
it's
you
almost
said
like
cold
this.
call, I froze because yeah, that's exactly right. That would be terrifying.
And that's definitely a great example of scaffolding. It almost sounds like this would be a semester or half a semester long, like, right? This is the big project you're working towards, and here are the steps we're going to do along the way, as opposed to, here you go, do it, cold call, do it, get it done. Yes, we've met the learning objective, right? It's not just about meeting the learning objective. We need to go beyond that. Yes, that's important. Yes, that matters, but we have to go beyond that. All right, group number 4, you had the anthropology final. What did group number 4 find in terms of value of utility value and inclusive content?
I did most of the talking in the breakout room, so maybe someone else can answer that, please. Okay, then I will answer. We found this is both low utility and low inclusiveness. It's a final exam, and it's sort of the archetype of a poorly written multiple choice question. And we talked about various incremental things that could be done to improve it, because assessment improvement is an incremental process. The question itself could be cleaned up, like the first one, what happened to have European farmers settle in the Plains region rather than non-Indian? Change it to an essay question so that at least you are writing in the discipline. It has high utility value, even if it's not very inclusive. And another possibility is then change it to a question along the lines of, how are these events relevant to your life? Although this makes sense for an American or Canadian student, if you're teaching this course in Japan, wouldn't make so much sense. Can anyone else add something to this?
I like those suggestions.
Yeah, thank you for those, Michael. Margot, did you want to chime in and share something?
No, I don't think so. I think he covered it. Sorry, you saw me
No,
unmute there.
I did. I did.
We had a great discussion though. I couldn't even see the writing the essays for a bit, and so they were able to get me to see that. But yeah.
Oh, good, good. Well, thank you, Margot. All right, last but certainly not least, we have group 5 with the real estate finance exam. They had a writing assignment. So if someone from group number 5 wouldn't mind chiming in their perspectives.
The world of real estate finance is so fascinating. So,
We didn't
everybody's
pick
jumping.
anyone, but I guess I'll go for it.
Okay.
There was very limited information. It was basically, it said just a written assignment and analyze a loan application, analyze guidelines, analyze a residential loan application. So there's not a lot of information there. So it's just, even as a student, I hope more information was given, because this was very sparse as far as understanding it. We did understand, I mean, this is a real estate course, so I think we did say it was high utility, so it would make sense for this. So again, high utility, but low inclusive content, because again, even just description or anything is very difficult to decipher what is actually is happening for this. There's no clear idea as far as learning outcomes, how it aligned to anything that what they're trying to learn, no rubric. I mean, it's just so many things to say about it that was very difficult. And again, as far as students, again, for inclusive, not everyone is possibly looking at loans or thinking about loans or having credit history or all of those things that might be barriers for people. And I don't know if we're supposed to look at the actual loan applications and analyze that as far as equity. I don't know. We didn't do that, but that's, there's so many different things associated with that we found were just so difficult for as far as equity and just understanding and learning and yeah.
Some really great points. there's this balance, right, between succinctness and I will say that these assignments, we pulled them from, we use Nuventive on our campus. I don't know what you all use. And so we have the folks upload their sample assignments. And so that's where these were pulled from. And this was a faculty member that said, here was the assignment. And you are correct. It was very, very vague. Clarity is kindness. If you take nothing else, clarity and kindness, include your students' voices and make sure that it's not just this one little siloed assignment. It has to be the philosophy for your course and your assignments. I'm going to click the last slide that has our contact information. If anyone has any last minute comments, questions, feel free to chime in. Denise and I will hang out for a minute as well if anybody has any questions, but thank you so much for your
Thank you.
participation.
Yeah, thank you. You guys did such a great job and all of the recommendations were excellent. So we hope you take this back to your colleges and use this, you know, to look at your own assignments, to help your colleagues look at their assignments. So yeah, thank you.
It was lovely to meet you all.
Yeah, have a great day, everyone.